Angle provides air pollution control systems to the natural gas processing industry for off-gas treatment of volatile organic compounds and hazardous air pollutants. Welcome to this month's Midstream Connect. I'm your host, Heather Rosenbaum. In this segment, we're talking about EPA regulations. While the oil and gas industry is largely focused on the drop in crude prices, the EPA is still working to increase standards. In fact, there's a proposal for the first ever regulation to control methane emissions from the oil and gas sector. Also, the EPA, along with NHTSA, are moving forward to complete the next phase of efficiency standards for medium and heavy-duty vehicle fleets. And the Bureau of Land Management has set limits and controls on production wells on federal and Indian lands for the first time. We spoke to the Director of Macroeconomics, Geopolitical and Policy at Stratus Advisors, John Canese. He explains how some EPA regulations are directly impacting the oil and gas industry today. Let's listen in.
There's two major EPA regulations that will affect oil and gas production. Number one is the Ozone National Ambient Air Quality Standard that will require states to submit implementation plans for reducing it to 70 parts per billion. And this is going to affect any facility that's located at or near a non-attainment area. So it will certainly impact those production facilities because they're going to have to identify where their sources are. A second one is the EPA's what's called HAPs, Hazardous Air Pollutant Emission Standards. And these cover both methane as well as other volatile organic compounds. Now those regulations are going to require controls beyond some of the other proposals for methane emissions. And so collectively, these are going to have to reduce what comes out of the wellhead, what comes out of compressor station, what comes out of transmission lines. And as a consequence of that, what happens is it's going to increase costs. It's going to increase compliance costs, monitoring costs, staffing costs for them. The previous standard was actually at 70 parts per billion, and states have not yet fully even implemented that standard. So, that standard was issued back in, I believe, 2008, and it took a long time for EPA implementing rules to come out for states to submit their plans on how they're going to achieve it. Obviously, the worse you are for ozone, the longer time frame you get to meet it. But the states haven't really complied with that one yet, and this EPA on the Obama administration issued a new standard, and as a consequence, they're going to have to move forward to meeting that one, a stricter standard.
Next up is the first in a two-part conversation with Babs Callan.
From a pipeline safety perspective, I think there are two major issues or trends. The first is dealing with legacy pipeline assets. These are pipeline assets that were either installed before the creation of the pipeline safety program and the pipeline safety rules, or assets that are aged or have been in the ground over time. The second issue that I would identify is dealing with new construction, regulation of new pipelines that are going in as a result of the development that's going on right now in the United States in the shale plays. A lot of focus on gathering lines, but also transmission lines that are being installed as well.
From a legal perspective, there's certainly there's been more enforcement at the state level and at the federal level as well. Kind of a general sensitivity across most of the states and certainly in the federal government to jurisdictional issues. The regulators are less and less likely to look at an asset and say, no, that's not subject to our regulation. They're very sensitive to gaps. And so we see a lot more kind of reaching on jurisdictional issues than we have in the past. We expect a proposed gas rule from the feds this year, probably early next month. There'll be a comment period, go to final rule. The feds are going to push real hard to go final in this administration so they don't spill over into the next administration, and then the rule could be changed again. So you'll see a real push this year to go final on a rule. In one sense, like I said earlier, This will give some certainty to the regulated community, but in another sense, I'm sure it will bring additional requirements and challenges, particularly for assets that have never been regulated before and that are becoming regulated. That's going to be the biggest challenge, I think.
Thanks for watching this month's Midstream Connect. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for making this segment possible. Until next time, let's stay connected.